Hello, my name is Russell Singer with the Avaya Serviceability Engineering team. This video will demonstrate how to create and manage Avaya Aura Conferencing conference profiles for your Avaya Aura SIP users. We'll begin by accessing our Avaya Aura System Manager 6.2 interface, which is the management interface where most of the administration for assigning conference profiles to users is performed. From here, you would select the User Management option under the Users menu on the left. From the tab that pops up there, you would select the Manage Users option. And then you have the option to either create a new user or manage an existing user by selecting the Edit button. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and create a new user from scratch here, and we'll assign a conferencing profile to that new user. So I'll select the New button. Now this user needs to be created just like you would create any other SIP user for Avaya Aura 6.2. So I'll enter a last and first name as well as a login name and password. There's one additional item that is required on this first identity tab here for your conferencing profile to work properly, and that is the time zone selection down near the bottom of that list. So you do need to select a valid time zone from that list for this user. And this is something to keep in mind if you're editing an existing user that probably does not have the time zone set. Next, we'll continue on to the Communication Profile tab. You do need to set a communication profile password for this user. And in fact, this password is what will be used by your SIP user in order to access the web conferencing component of Avaya Aura Conferencing 7 as well. You would then select the New button under the Communication Address option there. And this is to add an Avaya SIP handle for your SIP user. Again, this is something typical for any SIP user that would be added to Avaya Aura. So I'll go ahead and select the SIP extension that I'm going to use here. I'll set that in the fully qualified address as well as select the domain. And don't forget to click the Add button once you're done adding this SIP handle. Next, for the Session Manager profile, again, this is a SIP user that we're creating here. So I'll select the primary session manager. The origination and termination sequences are my communication manager server, and then the home location. Now at this time, the conference factory set is not a requirement, and so you can skip that selection there under session manager profile. Next, we're going to assign a communication manager endpoint profile to this user. That's simply assigning a CM station or associating a CM station with this user. So again, I'll use the same extension number that you saw previously for the SIP handle. I will select a SIP template. That's very important that you do select a SIP template there from the list. And the rest of the options there you can just leave as default. And now finally, at the bottom, it's time for us to assign a conferencing profile to this user. So we'll check that box for conferencing profile. You'll notice that by default, it's auto-generating a participant and moderator security code. In my case, generally I like to define my own codes for each user. That way it's a little bit easier to keep the mechanism consistent, but feel free to use either option. For the participant code, I'll enter the station number itself. For the moderator code, I will add a 1 to the beginning of that number. So that will be the code for the moderator. Now in my case, again here I have a location option. I want to select the same location in most cases that you would select under the session manager profile. You would want to set that here as well. And then finally we'll select the Get Templates button. This will retrieve a list of available conferencing classes of service from the conferencing server and allow us to assign one of those class of service to the user we're editing here. So you notice once I click that button, assuming everything works and the communication with the conferencing server works, I retrieve a list of class of service from the conferencing server. And as you select each one, you'll see the various fields below that get filled in with the details associated with that conferencing profile or that class of service. So you'll want to choose one that's appropriate for this user that you're adding, whether or not you want video as well as the number of participants and the priority given to that user. And then you're finally ready to click the Commit button. Now when you click the Commit button, what happens is System Manager takes that conferencing profile and some of the user information, such as the time zone and communication profile password, and it pushes that data to the Avaya Aura Conferencing system, which then creates the conferencing user. Unfortunately, at this time, it's not possible to go back to your system manager interface and edit the conferencing profile from the user there. So in order to edit the conferencing profile for this user, we actually need to connect to the provisioning manager for Avaya Aura Conferencing 7. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate for you now. You can, of course, select the user that you would like to edit here, and then click the Edit button. Now, once we're editing this user, we'll select the Communication Profile tab, and we'll scroll all the way down to where our conferencing profile was, if you remember that we created earlier. And you notice all that exists under the conferencing profile now is a button that says Launch Provisioning Client. This essentially is a button that will take you over to the provisioning client or the provisioning manager for the Avaya Aura Conferencing 7 server. And that's where you'll really need to edit the conferencing profile. So we'll click that button, and this opens a new tab in the browser. You may be prompted for your system manager login, again, depending on your configuration. Now from the provisioning client, what we're going to do to edit this user is to select the user management menu option at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and select search users. There are different ways you can do this, but I would like to show you the complete flow. So we'll select search users, and I'm just going to search for the login name with the extension number that I had entered earlier in the system manager interface. You see that this does find the user for me in the conferencing system. So I'll click on the login name that's on the left there. I'll just click the username. And you see I get some basic details about this user. One of the things you will notice is that the time zone is listed there as well as the location. In order to change, for example, the conferencing class of service that's assigned to this user, what I need to do is click on the Actions tab up at the top of that little window there for the user. And you'll notice here there are only 3 options: delete user, conferencing, and clear lockout. So what I want to do in order to edit the conferencing profile for this user is click on the conferencing option here under the Actions tab. You notice that this pulls up a new tab here for me, conferencing user, for this specific user. And you'll notice there that I have the class of service for that user. I have a checkbox that also shows whether or not video is enabled, and I have the priority. I also see the participant and moderator codes, which I could change if I wanted to as well. And if we did want to make a change there, for example, to the class of service, as soon as we click save there, that change will be made effective. And so this is the process of both creating a conferencing profile for an Aura SIP user and then later managing that profile in Avaya Aura Conferencing 7. Thank you for your time today. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback at mentor@avaya.com or on Twitter at Avaya Mentor. For more details or related information, please visit support.avaya.com. Thank you for choosing Avaya.